Thanks so much. New CNN ORC polls show the race tightening in several swing states. Let's discuss it with CNN senior political analyst and senior editor for The Atlantic, Ron Brownstein, and CNN political analyst David Gregory. Gentlemen, great to have you here. Let's pull up the latest polls of these all-important swing states. We have Arizona, as you can see, at the moment, Donald Trump is beating her there 49-44. In Florida, she has a slight lead, 49-47. Nevada, he is now leading 49-43. Pennsylvania, she is leading 48-44. Ron, what do you see in these states?
Well, look, I think the first thing is you've got to look at averages of polls, right? Because any one poll, particularly the Nevada poll, is a little off from what we've seen elsewhere. I think there's a core question on all of these polls. All of these polls and the many, the deluge of other polls that have come out in the last few days include last weekend during the James Comey announcement. And the question, I think, really is that the high point for Donald Trump, or is there something that extends beyond? I think if he is behind still 4 points in Pennsylvania, and that poll, and two others that came out yesterday, 6 points in Wisconsin, in polling that includes the actual announcement, it's hard to see him getting over the top. But he is keeping this very competitive and leaving her with very little margin for error.
Quick follow, Ron. You wrote this piece in The Atlantic. People should read it for themselves. But you described something that is reminiscent of what Romney tried in 2012, which is trying to go to states like a Wisconsin, like a Michigan, like Pennsylvania in this case, where Donald Trump probably won't win, instead of focusing on the states that he has to win.
Well, it's really both. There are two things. If you look at the calendar, if you look at where the candidates are going and where they are sending people, it tells you what they believe the world looks like, right? I mean, and the reality is that Donald Trump at the end is making a push for New Mexico, Colorado, Michigan, and Wisconsin. There are two reasons for that. One is that he has to win a state that has been counted in her corner in order to get to 270. Even if he wins all of the battleground states, he has to win one more place. But Clinton has taken a very calculated risk, Chris, in that she has spent almost all of her time and money in October in these battleground states that she doesn't have to win. Florida, North Carolina, Ohio, Iowa, Nevada. She has put much less effort in the states that are in her core. I mean, there are 7 states that are part of her core 270 that are the most competitive, and they are Colorado, New Mexico, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania, New Hampshire, and really in none of those, only in 2 of those, Pennsylvania and New Hampshire, has she truly treated them as battleground states. She's put a lot more money and time in those reach states. And so the question is, has she left the back door open in any of them for Donald Trump?
So, David, let's look at the latest Colorado poll, because it's interesting. Clinton and Trump tied 39-39. What do you see in all these numbers?
Well, I think, as Ron says, you have to look at the averages, because that Colorado poll is a little bit closer than we've seen in some of these other polls. But I think that the idea of him slipping through the back door is still something that she has got to be worried about. As I've spoken to senior Republicans in the past couple of days, they say a couple of things going on. One, they do see Republicans coming home, notably Republicans, big donors, and others who might have thought that Trump was out of this thing. And now as they see him get closer, they don't want to be blamed, in effect, if he were to only lose by 2 or 3 points. So it's kind of bringing them back in, as well as some tight Senate races where, say, a Ron Johnson in Wisconsin might be helping Donald Trump a little bit, because he's getting his voters out, and these are people who might also vote for Trump. But I think the reality is there's a little bit more pessimism than optimism here. While they like where things are trending, Republicans I talk to think that Trump probably has the best shot in Pennsylvania and in New Hampshire, but they recognize down 4 points in Pennsylvania, slipping in New Hampshire, they probably need some kind of other outside event, some other disclosure to help him. And if you look at Wisconsin, the Marquette poll came out yesterday. She's up 6 points. She's up 4 points in our polling in Pennsylvania. If she keeps those together, all she needs is New Hampshire, and she puts the race away, and she's up there.
Well, so again, still has the whole Colorado. I mean,
for them to look at fortune, and it is true, fortune favors the bold. But if the Comey bomb didn't get them where they need to be.
I mean, that really is the question, right? If you're still behind 6 points in Wisconsin and 4 points in Pennsylvania, 2 states that have been basically Lucy and the football for Republicans since 1992, the question is, if you're not ahead at that moment, with polling at that moment, will you go ahead? I think both of them are very hard. North Carolina is very different, obviously.
You say poll of polls, Florida, okay? That's why CNN does the poll of polls. If you look at Florida, it's like, oh, look, Clinton's back up there. But the average is It's a tie. And that means if it's tied there, does Trump now have a better potential path to 270?
Yes. I mean, because if he loses North Carolina or Florida, it is very hard for him to get there. The most straightforward path for Donald Trump is to hold all of the states that Mitt Romney won in 2012, which includes holding North Carolina, which at the moment is far from a sure thing.
So he has to hold North Carolina?
Well, yes, I think. And then add to that Ohio, Florida, and Pennsylvania. That's the most straightforward path. That gets him to victory. Pennsylvania seems like a bridge too far, so they have to cobble together something else, some combination of Nevada, Iowa, and something else. And the something else is one of those states that we have considered more safely in the Clinton column. It could be Colorado. It could be Michigan. It could be Wisconsin. Those last two look very hard. New Hampshire, as David said, looks very difficult. Every road for him ends at a state that has been considered more safely in Clinton's corner. And the question is whether they really are locked down as much as it appears.
Go ahead,
but
David.
also look what's happening in terms of the turnout models. I mean, here you have the president and Hillary Clinton going out trying to keep the focus on Donald Trump's vulnerabilities. I thought it was very interesting, Hillary Clinton saying, imagine him in the White House. Can you imagine him in the Oval Office? I think that's a key issue. So really making it about character, making it about what we see in the polls, that most voters don't find him fit temperamentally or qualified to be president. But you had the president of the United States urging African-American voters to come out or else his legacy could be erased. So, you know, we saw in 2012, right, going into the last day of voting, a very small percentage difference between Romney and Obama in the national poll averages, and it just showed how important turnout was for the Obama team, getting that Obama coalition out there. I think she's got to be able to rely on that here, and we're just not going to see it until Election Day.
Real quick, that Washington Post ABC poll that's gotten a lot of attention at having the race tied. I look at that less as a prediction than as a scenario. It has a likely voter model in which 75% of the voters are white. If 75% of the voters, in fact, are white, Donald Trump will have a very good chance of winning. But whether you use the census in 2012 was 74% white, the exit polls were 72% white, and both of them have been shrinking by 2 points every 4 years, which would give you an electorate by historical trends that would be somewhere between 72 and 70% white. They say it's 75. If in fact it is 75, you see what the result.
Donald Trump wins.
What it could be, or at least it's a nail biter. So,
but if it's 70, Hillary Clinton wins.
I think if it's 70, it's going to be much harder for Donald Trump. There's the preferences of the three big groups, right? Non-college whites, college whites, and non-whites are so distinct in this election, so divergent, that tiny changes in your assumptions about the composition of the electorate have huge impact on the polls. In reality, Hillary Clinton has to worry about some of the trends in African-American turnout in the early voting. The Hispanic turnout seems positive, and the college white turnout seems positive. And how that all sorts out, we'll know in a few days.
David, let's look at this graphic that we've put together of the controversies, basically the moments where the polls shifted a little bit during the past 3 months. And you can see that it's gone up and down, but Hillary Clinton has always been on top. If you look at the poll of polls, in other words, you're averaging all of the major polls together, she has always been on top throughout various controversies, some for him, some for her. Do you think that she has rebounded from Friday's controversy, as Chris would say, of the Comey announcement of looking into the Huma Abedin emails?
Well, I mean, what does it mean to rebound? I mean, I think that she has maintained probably at least a 3-point lead in the national polls and still has a much stronger position on the electoral map. But for all the reasons we've talked about, she's in a much closer contest now, and there's more momentum on Donald Trump's side, much more of a coming home factor in combination with these tighter Senate races. So we don't know if she's rebounded. We've got a new reality of the race being tighter.